Hello, my name's Elijah Wells and today's review is Andrew Stanton's new movie, Toy Story 5. The film follows Buzz and Jessie, who are pretty much now the main occupants of the playtime of Bonnie's playtime, and of course in their little household. But little did everyone, the toys know that technology is rampantly taking over the suburban world of what they know, as in all the kids are going on screens, going on iPads, going on phones. So when Bonnie gets the iPad-inspired Lily Pad, of course, and she gets hooked immediately, and of course it becomes a battle of playtime and of course Bonnie's attention. When the announcement came out for a new Toy Story film back in 2022 after the Lightyear spin-off film did really poorly in the box office, but did receive some decent reviews. Even myself did remember liking the film when it came out. And of course, it was a lot of people did see it as a panic move, or it's just an act of desperation, particularly with the more conservative reactions of the Lightyear film being totally normal, nothing about a gay side character or something, but it's all totally normal. But at the end of the day, I thought the film was okay, and the conservative reaction to the film was just beyond overblown to the point it just became a bit parody of itself. The big criticism that Toy Story franchise had is just as a franchise that may never end, as in even when it should have made a lot of sense to end at that point, like in Toy Story 3 when Andy parts ways, or something back in Toy Story 3, or when Woody and Buzz part ways in Toy Story 4. So it was pretty much didn't quite make sense why there's going to be another installment. Particularly we have two previous installments that could have essentially acted as finales. So even though they're both sequels that are actually critically and commercially really well liked. The main idea about the film is basically what technology's role is in the modern suburban world, and of course the child safety in the online space, and of course how much accountability should the parents and of course tech companies should have when it comes to child welfare, as of course it does show Bonnie going some fairly tricky places and also getting cyberbullied after her obsession with dolls, which is again a very grim scene, but it does go full circle around itself in a way that's very intricate and very nuanced. And of course the discussion about how technology is playing not just our lives and how much it's completely affect us, particularly after the pandemic where everything is just all Zoom calls and everyone's like playing on iPads and all that. But what I found interesting is how it takes it on a more honest direction about it, which is again really intriguing to say the least. A really good highlight of this movie, as of course in the past films of the Toy Story canon, is of course the voice work of Tom Hanks, Tim Allen and June Cusack is of course brilliant, as well as very consistent of what they did in their previous films as Woody, Buzz and Jessie, and even the more newer comers like Greta Lee as Lily Pad, who is pretty much a Bonnie's new toy that she's obsessed with, who doesn't realise how vulnerable and how much of a different person that the Lily Pad thinks Bonnie is, which is again, and how that miscommunication essentially almost torpedoes that relationship to a huge extent, and she feels incredibly guilt-ridden about it, which is again a very intriguing idea about not necessarily like a sentient AI like say in 2001 A Space Odyssey or something, but pretty much a device that tries to think what's best for a child, but ultimately completely screwing up in the process, which is again a very intriguing idea. Unlike, let's say, in 2001 Space Odyssey with HAL 9000, as in, I know what I'm doing, and that's what I am committed to that. Whereas in this film, it's pretty much, okay, I think I have to go back on that course quickly before I screw up even more, which is again a very intriguing idea. There's also the legend that is Conan O'Brien as Marty Pants, I say, who is basically this toilet training device that says, you want number 2, do you want number 3 or 1.5? And this is the impression I get from Conan O'Brien, who was just being himself as the potty train device, but with less hot sauce and less profanity in his Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend podcast, which I do watch bits of it on YouTube. Again, the voice acting in this film is like the previous film is incredible. Knowing it's a Pixar movie, I'm going to have to applaud them for the animation this time, but particularly in the wedding sequences that happens in both the beginning of the film and of course in the end of the film. Where of course Forky and Knifey are happily married, but someone poisoned the cake, And there's the one at the end, but I don't want to spoil it for you because of spoiler reasons, but it is done in a 2D style animation, which is somewhat a little bit reminiscent of, let's say, Puss in Boots or Spider-Verse films, but apparently Pixar are also doing the Gato movie, which is about an Italian cat in Venice, and it's also going to be done in that style, which is, again, I really do like when the animation studio really does evolve, despite being the originators of one of the most groundbreaking formats in animation history, being CG animation, and how they went into more 2D areas with hopefully some dash of CGI thrown into the mix. Is definitely a studio that's willing to evolve at best, and of course the results of that animation sequences, or 2 sequences in best, is very stunning and very gorgeous to look at well. What's interesting is, in Toy Story 5 there's definitely a little bit more throwbacks than usual. Unlike for a lot of films where they try to execute throwbacks like, oh, do you remember this? Oh, do you remember that? Oh, you remember this? I think it's like it's done purely for nostalgia and nothing else particularly, which is, again, if it's executed pretty badly, then it would just become like, oh, do you remember this? And we have nothing of it to new. But in this story, it follows Jessie as she finds herself in a home of a former owner, Emily, and it turns out it now has new occupants. But thankfully, the new occupants happens to be one of them happens to be a horse girl who's really into horses and has a little pet pig. Again, it also does reminisce quite a lot about her time with Emily, and of course her time with Andy as well, as she does do a lot of playing. And even when she encounters her old toys like the little phone and the little camera, of course Conan O'Brien the Smarty Pants, of course she does play a lot of them just quite well, and even has like a hugely imaginative play, like particularly in a scene where she's in a ballroom and it's of course being rigged with explosives, and of course it's pretty much somewhat reminiscent of the time of the Andy era of the Toy Story films, which is again very interesting and very gorgeous. And of course the animation of that sequence is also the same stuff you saw in the wedding sequence, which is again incredible that they utilised that animation as well, which is again really gorgeous. Of course, when it comes to like throwbacks as well, it does talk about in a more cheeky way, like Buzz and Woody kind of like shoving each other and like kind of bullying each other a little bit, like in the first film. Of course, there's quite a lot of like throwbacks as well, of course, which is again very cheeky and very enlightening, you see, which is not done in a way where it kind of shoves it into your face, but it's also done in a way it gives the movie some fresh air, while also reminding the audience of the path the franchise had took that left behind it, which is again a very interesting way to go around things, in my opinion. For Toy Story 5, even though I was a lot of people a bit hesitant about this movie, a bit comprehensive about it, just on sole purpose that we already had like 2 other installments that kind of acted as like a glorified finale, but I feel like this one did give the franchise a lot more life out of it, in my opinion, which is again very interesting to say least. And of course the idea about toys versus tech is definitely a genius way to go around it, and of course tech's responsibility of the child's welfare, as of course the toy's role in the modern society. Of course, the subplot involving Jessie going back to Emily's house, which is also probably one of the best storyline out of that movie. And of course, there's the new voice work of Greta Lee and Conan O'Brien, who are incredible in the movie. Of course, the usuals, Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, and Joanne Cusack, who of course are incredible in the movie. And of course, the new song by Taylor Swift, which goes back to her earlier country roots with I Knew You, which is also a really good song in my opinion. Maybe it could have been more focused, maybe like Folklore or Evermore, but I definitely did like that song, if I remember correctly. And of course, the animation, particularly of the ballroom scene and the wedding scene, is definitely a huge highlight for me, in my opinion. So, for Toy Story 5, I'm feeling an 8 or 9 out of 10 on this one. So, what do you think of Toy Story 5? Let me know in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, Threads, and this is Elijah Wells, and bye!